Despite the havoc that some people can wreak on your development, your well-being, and perhaps even your sanity, you might still find yourself missing them. This can be a jarring and confusing experience, especially when you're intellectually aware of how damaging the relationship was. You may even surprise yourself by wondering how they're doing, whether they think about you too or whether they miss you in the same way. For some, these thoughts can evolve into daydreams about what might have gone differently, what you could have done to avoid the breakup, whether you were too harsh or whether somehow you can make it work if you tried again. But often reality quickly intervenes. You remember how badly things ended. You remember the emotional chaos, the exhaustion, the sadness, and how small it made you feel by the end. And with that clarity, most are still able to recognize that rekindling things would definitely be the wrong thing to do. Yet, even with that awareness, you can still miss someone you know was terrible for you. Here are 3 reasons why this happens according to psychological research. You miss them because you were trauma bonded. Trauma bonds can form in relationships that are characterized by cycles of emotional pain, followed by brief moments of relief, affection, or reconciliation. One of the key features of these dynamics is that both distress and comfort come from the same person. This in turn gives rise to a form of attachment that is both incredibly powerful and confusing. With enough time for that cycle to perpetuate, your nervous system will start to associate this person with both threat and safety. This is a combination that can be extraordinarily hard to break away from. The study notes that even victims of severe and cruel forms of abuse often report feeling bonded to, missing, or longing for their abusers. In some cases, they even maintain their relationship with them. It's important to note that trauma bonding doesn't require physical abuse. Relationships that are emotionally abusive, emotionally volatile, unpredictable, or chaotic can produce similar effects. If love, validation, or calm only arrived after intense conflict, emotional withdrawal, or distress, then your brain would have learned to cling harder to those than moments of pain. The bitter irony of these trauma bonds is that they don't deepen despite the suffering, but because of it. This is exactly why missing someone after a destructive relationship isn't actually you missing them in the true sense of the word. Missing is just the closest word to what your brain can think of to describe the process of healing the attachment wound they left behind. You miss them because of intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement is a conditioning pattern where rewards are given inconsistently. In relationships, this is marked by affection, kindness, or intimacy appearing sporadically, without warning and often after periods of emotional deprivation. And often it can be hard to predict how long both the periods of intimacy and deprivation will last, or when the next will begin. If this sounds familiar to how a gambling addiction begins, that's because it is. Slot machines wouldn't be so popular if they paid out consistently. They hook gamblers in precisely because they reward them unpredictably. In time, the brain learns to chase those moments like a gambler chases the next jackpot. And the harder it clings, the easier it is to withstand all the gloom until the next emotional payoff. However, even after the relationship ends, this conditioning doesn't immediately disappear. You miss the fantasy, not the person. Partner idealization refers to the tendency to hold overly positive beliefs about a partner or relationship that aren't supported by objective evidence. This means that when you're highly emotionally invested in a partner or a relationship, your mind will fill in the gaps with imagination and wishful thinking. And often, those gaps are their most conspicuous flaws. People can develop positive attitudes and perceptions of their partner that exceed what actual independent assessments of that partner's actual traits would justify. In other words, we can believe in a version of someone that exists more in our mind than in reality. This idealization often extends into the future. You may not necessarily have fallen in love with who they actually were as a person, but instead with who you believed they could have become. In this sense, the end of the relationship will leave you grieving the life you imagined for yourself with them. The healed version of them, the stable version of the relationship, the version where everything finally made sense. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to help us make more videos.